Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
I am your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that wraps up everything with a nice and tidy bow. Tony, how you doing today?
I am doing swell this evening. What about you?
Good. I'm doing good. We're, in the not quite middle of December, but we're a week or so into December. You busy shopping? You busy decorating? Listening to Christmas music?
Well, yeah, I'm getting ready to spin my my Beach Boys record Christmas album, as well as my a Charlie Brown Christmas record. And as far as like getting gifts ready, I'm just getting gifts ready at work for the employees, but otherwise a pretty mellow start to December.
Yeah, we're not doing too many decorations this year. We did get the tree up, I think, a day or two before December. But yeah, we're kind of keeping it a little bit more low profile this year. I did, though, today just did a majority of my Christmas wrapping, which is nice because I never really look forward to it, only because I suck at wrapping presents, like birthdays or any occasion. Like, I'm not good with wrapping paper and tape.
You gotta have finesse.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. I always see the memes where like people, like the meme is like the feeling you get when the scissors start to glide through the wrapping paper, but I can never do that without it just looking like a mess, uneven, edges, and yeah, it's not a pretty sight. I just use way too much wrapping paper and tape. But
I find it hard to like not get wrinkles in it. I think that's where I really struggle, is I just get too much like fluff, too much air in it, and then I try to fold it, and then it's a mess.
Yeah, not my favorite part of the holiday season. But something that over the years has really become a big thing for people for the holiday season is looking at their Spotify Wrapped, which for people who don't use Spotify, it's basically usually the start of December. Spotify will, collect your data of all the songs and albums and artists and bands you listen to and kind of compile it in a cool, neat, cute looking way with like graphs and certain stats. And usually it'll list your most played artist, and then usually your like top 20 played songs. It gives you a playlist with them in order with how many listens and things like that. And I know Apple Music does a similar thing. Tony and I use Spotify, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But there's other websites too people use. I think like what is there one called like Listen FM or something too, where it tracks it records your stats of what you listen to through the app.
Gotcha.
So we're going to be doing that on this episode. We don't really have a holiday themed episode for this year. Next year we do have a really cool idea that we've talked about that we might try to pursue, but we just didn't have a lot of time this year to do it. So not really any, when we did an episode last year where we talked about our favorite Christmas music and things like that. So this year we're going to focus on our Spotify Wraps. And then we're going to talk about some of our favorite albums that came out this year, music specifically for 2023. And then maybe talk about some of just our favorite music moments from the year, things like that. So it's just, this whole episode's kind of like year in review for 2023. So Tony, why don't you start us off with some of your Spotify Wrapped? I'm trying to guess what like your most played artist would be. I'm just going to assume it's the Beach Boys.
Yeah, you got me there. They just have such a big catalog, and I can listen to them for fun, for, inspiration, even for heck, just entertainment. Some of it's just kind of funny. It had to be them this year. I am not sure what yours is going to be. You had mentioned a lot of Counting Crows, so I could guess that, but also though you're always listening to Pearl Jam, and we even did a couple Pearl Jam podcast moments. So I don't know. It's got to be one of those two, I think.
It's not, but I will say this: I was betting on Counting Crows because, as I mentioned on our Counting Crows episode that we did a couple weeks back, that when I got into that album, Recovering the Satellites, kind of when I like had listened to it so much, where I was like, okay, if I love this album so much and I enjoy their first album, they have like a handful of albums after those. They don't have actually a huge catalog. Like they don't release many albums. Like there's a lot of years in between their albums now, but I went through and listened to like the rest of their albums all the way up to their most recent release, which was last year. And I pretty much enjoyed all of it. So I thought it was going to be Counting Crows, but it's the same. Well, I don't know. Last year, I think my top artist was Spoon because last year was the year I really got into Spoon. But no,
Okay.
this year, like it was, I think 2 years ago, it was the Tragically Hip.
Okay.
Which
I was thinking about that the other day, but it kind of slipped my mind by now.
Yeah. And I think the reason for that is if they hadn't released that Phantom Power box set a couple months ago or last month in November, they probably would have been more like number 2 because I listened to a lot of those unreleased tracks and the live albums from that box set because that's all on Spotify. And I think that's what ran those numbers up for the Tragically Hip. But yeah, not so surprising because they are one of my favorite bands. But what were your other 4? What were your top 5?
Okay, so number 2, this one did surprise me, but it was the Chili Peppers.
Wow.
Looking back on that, I was gonna say, oh yeah, we did the they released 2 albums like the beginning of the year. Nope, that was last year.
No, that was we did. That was I think our second, or I think our third or fourth episode of the podcast, which was we recorded those last year. Yeah, because last year is when they released both those albums. So
I think a big part though is just they have so many songs, and they're a band I can always go to. And now that they have a couple more albums recently, it kind of keeps it fresh. When I visited Ishan in LA, of course I had to listen to the Chili Peppers there. That was my one chance. Number 3 may surprise you, but it was BNL, Bare Naked Ladies.
I think we did that episode earlier this year where we did a band appreciation episode.
Yeah,
was that it, or were you just listening to a lot of their music?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, definitely that kind of helped fueled it, but I think a lot of their songs, like I just kind of understood more now that I'm older. So it was really fun to be like, oh yeah, I remember this song, but now I can understand the song, and my taste have diversified a bit, and so they also have a large discography, and you can learn a lot from them as songwriters. Number 4, no surprise, Stone Temple Pilots. That's my band. And number 5,
my guess is Elliott Smith. I'm gonna be a little shocked if he's not in the top 5.
He's not. I went on an Elliott Smith break, but I am full stride back into him now. But it was Queens of the Stone Age, which does make sense because
the new album.
The new album, plus we did the an episode on.
We've done a couple because we talked about the new album in an episode. The one the villains and self-titled episode, right?
Right.
And then a couple other, like we talked about them on other episodes, like the Halloween one, and I think
on the game show we did like Clockwork.
Yeah. Oh, and then like the one where we had to name all their songs. That other game show one.
Oh yeah, it's kind of crazy they're only number 5 after all of those mentions.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I guess I'm not so surprised on that.
Right. Okay. So what's your little list here? So
Treasure Hip 1, 2. As you predicted, number 1, and so did I actually. Number 2 is the Counting Crows. Curious if they're gonna, because I'm still kind of in a big Counting Crows phase. Like there's still albums of theirs where I'll get into a song that maybe I didn't love on the first couple listens. So I'm curious if they'll still be there next year. It'll help if they release new music, which they're probably gonna release another EP because Last year they did an EP where it was 4 songs, but it was like a suite, like a musical suite where all the songs are connected. And
Right.
supposedly he's writing a part 2 that will combine with that first EP to make like a full album. So, and I did enjoy the EP. I listened to it earlier this year when I was getting into them, and I did enjoy it. Number 3, not so shocking because they were my number 1 last year. Spoon.
Okay.
Now this is where I'm going to say, well, I guess I don't really need to say now, but the reason 2 Spoon's number 3, they're that high up, is because I share my account with Lindsay, my girlfriend, and we do have a lot of the same similar tastes, but then there's a lot of times where we don't. There's a lot of bands that I love that she does not, and then there's some songs and bands that she listens to that I don't love. So, but Spoon is one of the bands we both really like. So she listens to a lot of Spoon, so that helps boost that up. Number 4, kind of, he was in my top 5 last year too.
Bruce?
No, Gord Downey.
Oh.
And that's because his solo albums, besides a couple of them, to me, most of his solo albums are as strong as most hip albums. So to me, it's almost just like listening to more hip, especially when I go through the hips catalog and I'm like, I need something else that isn't these albums. His solo albums are very much in the same realm. So he got number 4. Plus, he released a new album this year. I guess it was so early this year, I kind of forgot about it. So that helped add to his, he might have even been higher had it been released more in the middle of the year. And then number 5, this is probably the most surprising. Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh, wow.
Another band that Lindsay likes with me. I listen to more of their stuff. Like I like them more than she does, but there's certain songs of theirs that she'll listen to over and over. And we saw them at the end of last year, and I feel like that kind of got us both into them a little bit more, even more than we already were. So, and then they kind of released a new album this year that actually we'll be talking about here in a minute. So that kind of helped add to it too. But not really surprising in either of our lists, besides maybe like the order. Like, I'm not shocked that B&L and Red Hot Chili Peppers on your list, but as high as they are, I'm a little surprised.
I mean, given the context of like the year, Bare Naked Ladies isn't really surprising. But if it was not a normal year, but if it was just another year, it would be shocking for them to be there, I think. But no, yeah, these lists check out for sure. Now, you're gonna be kind of happy with the top 5 songs. I'm very curious what yours are. You might be able to guess my number 1. Which I know is crazy. Guess the most listened to song of mine this year, or the song that I listened to the most this year.
Should I know it?
Think what song from one of our albums really struck me off the bat.
Oh, okay. That hint, that helped me. I'm gonna say then Candy's Room.
It was, and I wouldn't call it my favorite off the album though anymore. But really? When I first heard it,
what would you say is your favorite now?
You're gonna put me on the spot like that?
Well, you made it seem like another song way more than it now.
I just love them all so much. That's a tough question. But here's a little fun story though, is that technically that was not my number 1 song. Technically, it was a 13-minute long Jimi Hendrix song, but I'm pretty sure I fell asleep to it on repeat accidentally.
Oh, so you're not counting that as your number 1 then?
I'm not counting that as my actual number 1. But okay, what was your number 1? And then I'll go over the rest of mine.
My number 1.
Is it something from Recovering the Satellite?
It is, but it shocked me a little bit which one it is. I think I understand why, but yes, it is one from Recovering the Satellites. Any guesses on which one it is?
Well, you said it was a little shocking which one, so I don't know. If I don't take that clue too seriously, I'm gonna guess Angel of the Silences because it's just a banger off the bat.
Wow, you nailed it. Yep, that was my number 1. I think I said I listened to it over 30 times.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, well, because here's the thing.
Where does it tell you that?
Well, when you're like going through the thing, like you let it play through the slides. Let's see here. It tells you how many songs you've listened to.
Oh, okay. I
And
think I'm
then
about to see it pop up. Oh, 38 times for for Jimi Hendrix for me.
yeah, I'm waiting for mine to pop up. Yeah, 32 times starting on. So March 16th is when I first listened to Angels of the Silences this year, which means that that was the date when I listened to the album all the way through. And then it was like, wow, holy shit, this is really good. And then I just kind of kept listening to it. Cause I'm someone who I listen to full albums. And then when I don't, it might be a playlist. So there's not a lot of times where I'm just going back on Spotify and putting things on repeat and repeat, mostly because I'm afraid of burning out on songs. So 32 might not seem like a lot, but for me, that's actually quite a bit. But most of those, so that means I probably heard the album like 36 times because, here's the only thing with that song and that album is that I think a lot of that for me came with, I would at certain moments start the album and then not finish it. And Angels of Silence is the second song on the album. And then sometimes if I was getting in the car and driving, I would skip Catapult because I would want kind of a faster song. So I think that's why like that song's in the top 5, but Catapult is not in the top 5.
Okay, that
I
makes
know
sense.
This Starts Catapult. I love Catapult, but like Angel of the Silence is a good one to like when I start driving to like start listening to, you know?
Right.
But so what were your other 4?
So my other 4, so number 2, you'll be happy with me. Black Again, STP from the Shangri-La Di Da album.
So did doing that album earlier this year, did that like did you rediscover it?
I will take any excuse to listen to STP.
Okay.
But no, that's always been one of my favorites on the record, and it's just an awesome song. And I think what's cool about it is that much like Candy's Room, I can't think of another song that really sounds like it. And not that everything has to be groundbreaking or one of a kind, but it is always cool to hear a gem that just stands out on its own. Number 3, I'm really shocked by this, but I think it's just because it's the whole album, every song is short. These Sad Times from the Softies, one which I imagine you have no idea how it goes, which is totally fine. I have no hard feelings about that.
Yeah, I've not gone back to that album unfortunately since.
You know, I haven't really gone back to it much either, to be frank. Number 4, you're gonna be really happy. Darkness on the Edge of Town.
Okay,
to Bruce.
Sense. But that one makes more sense almost because I know you kind of covered that.
Right, exactly.
For your solo show you did earlier this year, and I know you were working out like an acoustic version of it, so I'm sure you were listening to it for
right. And you know what? Within my top 15, no, if I go my top 20, there were 5 Bruce songs from that record.
Wow.
So that shows how much that I actually enjoyed it.
Wow. So what were the other Bruce songs then on your list?
So in order, those Bruce songs: Candy's Room, Darkness on the Edge of Town, Badlands,
okay,
Something in the Night,
wow,
and Streets of Fire.
Yeah, that's the underrated one.
Yeah, that one just hits.
I'm a little surprised Badlands is that high up. First, I was like, maybe it's just because it's the first song on the album. So, like, when you go listen to the album, even if you don't finish it, you'll finish that song. But I do remember, as of lately, you've been telling me you've been really getting into that song.
Yeah, it was one that I like when Candy's Room,
Candy's Charm.
when the charm of Candy's Room kind of when it wore off, I guess, and I heard like the live version that you showed me, and I was like, this is way better. I started realizing how genius Badlands actually is, like lyrically, and as we've talked about, like it's a hype song. Like you listen to it and you're just like, all right, let's get this bread. But my number 5 most listened to song this year, coming out of left field, I know you're not expecting it, And So It Goes, Billy Joel.
Wow, that's why. I mean, that's probably my second favorite Billy Joel song of all time. So
get out of here with Summer Highland Falls.
No, that is the. Come on, you used to love that song. Now you're too good for it.
What is your favorite Billy Joel song?
Summer Highland Falls.
Oh, so it is. Okay. I thought you were denying it.
No, that is my favorite. It always has been, always will be.
Well, for me, And So It Goes, when we did our episode talking about the best Billy Joel singles and stuff. You turned me on to that song, and I was taken back by it. It's quite a beautiful song.
Super simple, and it almost doesn't fit the album because like the rest of that album is like really high energy, and then this is like one of the only like ballads. And out of all his ballads, is maybe the most stark one, the most raw, most simple, but it's so good. Like every lyric is fantastic. The melody is great. The
The
piano,
performance.
yeah.
The thing with Billy Joel is I feel like he can come off very full of, like, he's kind of like Ben Folds, where like you can hear the ego in him. So
So it's just
sometimes
piano players.
it's yeah, or Sting, you know.
He doesn't play
People like,
piano.
well, I mean, okay. Well, point being, I feel like that song is quite like a vulnerable, like authentic performance. Very touching.
And by that I meant maybe Sting does play some piano, but that's not like his main. I would say his main instrument is bass.
Right. I guess he started out playing guitar though. I think.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
no,
know.
I know he can play guitar, but I would
Right.
say like when we saw him
He's
live
known
earlier
for
this
it.
year, he didn't play any piano.
I would love to see him just bust out Piano Man one show.
Sting or Billy Joel?
Bruce. All right.
Okay.
What are your top 5 songs of 2023?
So we already said "Angels of the Silences" was number
Right.
one. Number
Good
two,
choice.
this is a Lindsay song. This is not one. This is what I was saying. With us sharing an account,
Oh
this is
God.
one of the few moments where a song of hers is up high. It's a Frank Ocean song called "Pink and White."
Okay.
She found it out earlier this year. Like she heard it in a video or something, or like in a show or movie.
It's actually
She
called
liked it.
Pink Plus White.
Well, okay, but I'm sure it's pronounced "pink and white." Um, and it's got cool chords. She likes it because of the chords in the song. She has a certain. We'll have to talk about it in an episode one time. Like she has a certain chord progression that she loves. And not like a specific like F to G to A minor, but like there's a certain and this is where my music theory fails me. Like like the actual type of chord progressions, like the
Right, like a
one to the fifth.
2-5-1.
Yeah, like there's one of those that she really likes, and the song does that. I think.
Okay.
So she listened to that song a lot this year. And she's someone where she'll get into like that one song by Frank Ocean, and she'll maybe listen to a couple of his others and won't connect with them at all. So like that's the only song she likes from him. So
Which is valid.
yeah. So that's number 2. Number 3, and this is a song I was expecting to be the most played. Can you guess it? This is the one that I would have put money on that I listened to the most.
Is this one also your favorite song of the year?
Well, we'll get to that later, maybe.
Maybe, but is a Cast Iron Skillet?
That is correct. Cast Iron Skillet, Jason Isbell. So far, the only song on either of our lists that actually came out this year. Yes, that was my number 3. I thought it would have been number 1, but when the song first came out, I listened to it a bunch, and then right before the album came out, I kind of stopped so I wouldn't get tired of it because I knew I'd listened to the album a bunch in a row. And then I got the album on vinyl a couple days before the release in the mail. So I listened to the vinyl a lot. So I kind of stopped listening to it on Spotify as much. And I think that's where the decline started. And then so much other music came out after that album that I just, yeah. So it probably could have been even higher, but yeah, so it's a little less. So that's 3. Number 4, this is an odd one, but it's because Lindsay and I both love the song, and she probably listened to this even more than I did this year. Radiohead song called Separator. It's the last song on their King of Limbs album, which was their second to most recent album.
What a lovely title.
Separator? King of Limbs. King of Limbs.
Yeah. Very
PG. It's often related as, or people often say it's their least favorite Radiohead album besides their debut album, Pablo Honey. But there's a lot of underrated songs on King of Limbs, and Separator, the closer, is one of those, and it's my favorite off the album. Probably a top 3 Radiohead song for me and for Lindsay. And we always put it on like any playlist when we're in the car or whatever. We put it on because it's such a good song. And for Radiohead, it's actually kind of a feel-good song. Like musically, it just has a very positive vibe. It's still very chill, but it's actually one of their most like positive sounding songs, like just musically, like all major sounds. So, but she loves that song and she always listens to it. And then I listen to a lot, and then we listen to a lot together. So I'm not surprised, but I think in other past years it's been top 10 or 20, but this is the first time it's made, I think, top 5 appearance. And then my 5th song, really no surprise, title track, Covering the Satellites, my favorite song off of that album. And when I first gave that album, like the first 10 listens, I was sleeping on that song. But over the last like maybe 4 months, I've decided it's my favorite on the album. So maybe a little surprising, but and then we should just go over really quickly because it tells you this at the end. What was your top genre, and how many minutes did you listen to music on Spotify this year?
Yes. Oh, well, by the way, let me just throw something real quick. For my, what is it called? Like where you listen to music, or this year your listening took you places. And so basically it said that I think it was Burlington. Yes. Burlington is where my like core. Rico, how do you describe this? you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, like what was it, like they were trying to guess where you lived based on what music you listened to? Was it that?
Yeah, well, like the thing says Burlington, USA. People there are far more likely to be fans of Elliott Smith, Heat Miser, and the Beach Boys.
It's like here's one place that listens to similar music like you do.
I love how it's Burlington, USA, because I would assumed it would have been in Washington, because like Elliott Smith is like a Northwest artist,
but STP, they're a Seattle band, right? Technically,
what
are they? Or are they not?
No, I think they're from like San Diego or something.
Oh, okay, my bad. Never mind.
But anyways, enough of the shenanigans. My top genre, I believe, was just rock, which is kind of almost a little surprising
for you. Well, I don't know, because like, what would you consider Beach Boys?
Pop.
Oh, but BNL, STP for sure. Bruce,
BNL's rock. Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're kind of one of those bands where I think they kind of toe a line between a ton of different genres, but I would consider them maybe alternative rock. But
yeah, I could,
and they have definitely some like pop for sure. Like a lot of their is like rock/pop, especially their most recent albums. But yeah, I consider it rock.
So okay, what was your top genre then? I almost want to also say rock.
Mine was rock for sure, and that makes sense because like all the like Hip, Counting Crows, Spoon, Death Cab, they're all rock. I mean, Death Cab's earlier stuff was like indie rock, but their most recent stuff is still like rock/alternative. My place that they said. The location that listened to music most similarly to me was Victoria, Canada, which is funny because the one time you, me, Tessa, and our grandparents went to Canada was to Victoria.
Oh, okay. It was.
Yeah, we were there for only like a day and a half. We went on a ferry. That was the only time I've ever been out of the country. My only time I spent in Canada, and it was in Victoria. So that's funny. It makes sense because 2 of my most played artists and bands were Canadian bands. So that makes sense.
Rush wasn't on your top 5 artists?
No. But BNL probably in the top 10. Nickelback?
Yeah, okay. I would believe that. And also rock is such an umbrella term, like there's so many types of rock. So, it's not surprising, I suppose. Now minutes listened to. Now, I'm actually curious for you because you listen a lot of your music on vinyl. So obviously that doesn't add up. Yeah. And for me, at my job, I can listen to music a lot. I do a lot of driving now. So I just listen to music, or I'll try podcasts every once in a while. So I'm actually curious how big your number is. My amount of minutes listened. Sorry, what?
Oh, I thought you wanted me to say mine first.
Sure.
Well, this year, like my previous jobs, I was in a situation like the one you're in now where I could listen to music while I was working. So past years, I'm sure it was even higher than this year. This year, I had a lot of time where I was not working. And when I wasn't working, correct, I was listening to a lot of vinyl. But Lindsay still will listen to music. We'll use Spotify to listen to music. And by the way, I guess I should have said this earlier. Spotify definitely does not pay artists enough money. They're kind of sleazy when it comes to that. But Tony and I we just like the design of Spotify more than Apple Music. And I have
Yeah,
a good deal with like Hulu bundled in. So I hate to promote, and this is not us promoting Spotify, even though this podcast is also on Spotify. Um, Probably where I would assume a lot of the people who listen to this podcast listen to it on Spotify, but in no way are we endorsing their behavior. But my minutes listened to this year, 35,000.
hey, I actually topped you quite a bit.
Yeah, well, it's because if like I said, if this year, if I was working my last job all this whole year like I did last year and the year before, it probably would have been higher. But I had a lot of time where I was not working this year, and that's when I spun a lot of records and just listened to Spotify less.
That makes sense. And my minutes listened to this year is 71,803.
Wow. Yeah, I bet
And
you that's where mine would have been.
and I could totally see that. And like obviously there was a lot of this where it probably was accidentally playing in the background, or I wasn't, I had the volume all the way down.
Well,
because I
you
was
said
in the middle of
you
work.
fell asleep to a song for a whole night.
That is true. That is a lot of minutes right there.
That's like I'm assuming. Well, you stay up late and stuff, so maybe not quite a full 8 hours of sleep, but that was probably at least 6 hours worth of listening right there.
Right, which is
We're not even
a mouth a mouth. Yeah, no, screw that. Okay,
but no,
well,
it's pretty good.
not really surprised with either of our raps this year.
I can just scrolling through mine. I mean, a lot of mine are like Recovering the Satellites. The album is in a lot of my top. I don't even know is this like a top 50 maybe that Spotify gives you in a playlist. So like Children in Bloom is pretty high. Let's see. A lot of the songs from the new Jason Isbell album and Ben Folds album, which we're going to be talking about in a minute. Songs from that Phantom Power reissue. Those are high on my list. Songs from the new Foo Fighters album. And then some classics, some like, Spoon songs that Lindsay and I both love. Some of the Brad songs from the Brad's newest album.
I forgot about that album. I was just looking at it the other day.
And then just some of my favorites. Talking Heads, This Must Be the Place, one of my favorite songs of all time. That's in there. Days of the Week made my top 50 list.
Hey, represent.
I'm trying to see if any others from any of the albums that we did. Does not look like it. But Days of the Week did.
That's great. If there's one to cut through, that definitely should be one of them. I kind of wish the Elliot made it in there, but like
there's no way it could have, because even right now, because it cuts off, I think in November. I think November, the start of November is where they cut the time off, and that's when they start actually working on these, Spotify Wrapped playlist things. So, if you're getting me Elliott Smith at the beginning of the year, then some of my favorites that I've been listening to a lot, like, Bled White or Waltz Number 2, those maybe would have made the my list.
Right. I mean, for me on my list, like if you download it, you get like 100 songs. Number 60 was Days of the Week, and then 61 was Bob Cajun. Get some hip action on there. One was on here somewhere too. U2.
That was your most played song from Octoon Baby?
I guess so. I mean, it's a good one. I'll say that.
Oh, because I was looking on my phone, but I'm on my computer on Spotify, and you're right, they are numbered. Let's see where Days of the Week ended up. Was it higher than where you had Days of the Week? Hold on.
Which that'd be kind of outlandish if so.
You said yours was at 60?
Yep.
My days of the week on my playlist 42.
What?
So I listen to
No
days of the week
way.
more than you.
Wow, that okay. My New Year's resolution, I know exactly what it's going to be. Listen to Days of the Week more than you.
Well, and it helps too that like we did that album like earlier in the year, right? Like we did it.
We did it in
I,
the summer, right?
was it in the summer?
Mm,
Little before, maybe. I thought.
End of spring, early summer, somewhere there.
Yeah. Okay. Um. So yeah. So not you know, if people know our taste of music, none of those like artists or whatever was most surprising. The most surprising, I think, was that I can tell how much you love "Darkness" by Bruce because and half the album ended up on your well, probably more than half, right? Or was it just those five?
Well, no, there was others that made it in the top
The
100.
top 100, yeah. So yeah, that's how much you love that album.
Well, I'm
Um,
surprised Racing in the Street made it to 49. That's a long song, too.
yeah, I don't think I have any like. There's one. There's only one song. Actually, a 7 minute song is in my top 23. A song from the new Guaraldi record. It's over 7 minutes long. Um,
I can kind of beat you on that, though, almost. I mean,
well,
it's,
yeah,
it's number 40, but 17-minute long Pink Floyd song.
yeah. Well, in your top number one song, you said it was like a 10 minute Jimi Hendrix song.
1340 to be exact. And that's not even the longest on that album.
Jesus. Um, so now I kind of want to talk about new music from this year. We're kind of recapping, and I have a couple lists, and I kind of want your takes on my list, as much as you can, because I know you and I have not listened to all the same new music this year. I tend to check out, I think, maybe more new releases than you do, maybe just because I have more time.
No,
Um,
you definitely seek it out more than I.
yeah, so I have I have a couple lists. First list I wanted a really quick short list is every year usually I'll buy a box set or two when it comes to like vinyl releases. And there was two that I bought this year. Well, three. One of them being one of the White Stripe Volts from Thurman Records Volt.
Oh,
But it hasn't. It's I think it's coming next week. It was the one for last month, so I haven't gotten in the mail yet, so I can't really rate it. But I bought two other this year. One being actually, well, kind of, I guess the U2 one is kind of a box set when they did their Songs of Surrender, where they picked 40 of their songs and like did different arrangements with them, mostly kind of acoustic, slower arrangements. I guess I'll include that. The box, I mean, it's just like four records in a box set because there's four albums, but like there's nothing else that was included with it. So box set wise, there's nothing special, but it's a decent. It was a decent release. I didn't include it in my top albums of the year because they're just like redoing all their songs. Plus, some of the new versions are fantastic, and a couple of them are even better than the originals. But then a good amount of them are either on par with the originals or worse. So out of 40 songs, it's quite a mixed bag. But the most recent box set that I bought came out just last month was the Phantom Power box set, which I already talked about. Cool box set, came with a remastered version of the original album, an LP of unreleased songs from that recording session, alternative takes, and then a live album. And it came with like a picture that was signed by the band. And it came with like a booklet that has the band members talking about each song on the album. And then I had the producer who had like a whole couple pages dedicated to him talking about his time recording the album with the band. But that was a cool box set. You should, I know Phantom Power wasn't your favorite album that we did this year, but I think you should check out the alternative songs. Not the alternative version, sorry, the unreleased songs, because some of them I almost think should have been on Phantom Power.
Likewise to you, but with XO, there's a few. I mean, I would say I think only one of them's like I think should have made it on there, but But yeah, no, I'll check that out. Especially because Phantom Power was like an album where I did enjoy it, but like it was kind of just missing that sauce for me a little bit. And so I think maybe that will help me kind of maybe like see the album differently or like have fun visioning it with like a different track list.
And then the last, what are you laughing?
It's fine. It's fine. Keep going.
No, what are you laughing about?
No, I just loved your casual transition.
Well, I will listen to those songs. I have nothing
No,
else to say because I have not listened to them.
I was not expecting an answer. It just was funny.
Anyway, is that a better transition?
Much better. Thank you.
The last box set I want to talk about is Jason Isbell reissued his, I would say, his most popular album, Southeastern. And it box set included remastered original album, then a whole album of the acoustic demos to every song but one in the order of the track listing album, and then a third LP that had a live performance of the album all the way through. So you get like one LP has just the original album, then the second one has the demos for almost every song, and then the third LP has a live version of every song.
Wow, that is a lot of content right there.
So that was a pretty good box set. The live album sounds phenomenal. The demos are cool. And I think I might have told you this before, but there is a there is
Hello?
a can you hear me?
Yeah. You disappeared for so long.
No, because I my brain kind of fogged out. And sorry. I forgot what I was saying. You
Sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt
you
your flow.
interrupted my flow. I think I might have told you this before, but in one of the demos to one of the Jason Isbell songs, the final lyric was, "I would play her classic country songs," but in the demo, he originally had the line, I would play her Harry Nilsson songs."
Oh yeah, that's right.
Um,
What a great nod.
yeah. So I'm sad that didn't make the final cut. I mean, it makes sense. Classic country songs. He's kind of a country artist. Like, it makes more sense for him to change it. But and maybe he thought his fans wouldn't know Harry Nilsson, because Harry Nilsson unfortunately is too overlooked. Even though he does have some big songs, so I get why he changed it. So that was the box set list. I made a separate list for my favorite EPs, thinking there'd be more than two that I listened to this year, but there's only two. One being Spoon. They released one really, I think, pretty early this year, or no, I think it was in the summer, called Memory Dust, and it featured 3 songs that were left off of their album that came out last year, their most recent album, 2 originals, and then one a Bo Diddley cover. Out of the 3, there's one I liked a good amount. Bo Diddley cover, it is what it is. And then the other one, it was not a song I loved. I'm glad it didn't make it on the album. And actually, all 3 I'm glad didn't make the album. So not the most exciting EP. It didn't even get a physical release. But one that did was the Boy Genius EP. And I think I maybe talked to you before about Boy Genius. They're the super group that has Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, and Julian Baker, all 3 singer-songwriters. They came together and formed a band more than a couple years ago, did an EP, then didn't really do anything else. And then this year, they released their first full album. And then just months ago, they released an EP of 4 songs that didn't make it on that album. And it was pretty good. Again, I don't think any of the songs they left off the album would have been better than the songs on the album. But, if you liked that Boy Genius record, then you'll like those other 4 songs. And that did get a physical release, which I did buy. Pretty briefly, we should talk about another list that I created called Disappointing Albums. even though this isn't an album, the Killers, they're doing a second greatest hits album. That's coming out this year. Actually comes out tomorrow. And on it are 3 songs that they recorded after their most recent album, Pressure Machine, which came out like I think 2 or 3 years ago now. And they were going to record a follow-up to that album this year and release it. But then, like, last minute, they like changed their minds, and Brandon Flowers was like, I don't like the style we're going into. I feel like we've matured as songwriters. So they did not release that album. And instead, 3 of the songs that they recorded for it, they put on this greatest hits album. And unfortunately, only 2 of those 3 songs have been released. The other one I'll listen to tomorrow when it comes out. But the 2 that they released already, I have not liked. One of them was called Boy, that was released earlier this year. It's an okay song, not their worst, but far from their best. Then a couple months ago, they released one called Your Side of Town. That is a bad song. I do not like it. It's like a really bad Pet Shop Boys song. Very poppy, 80s inspired. I just don't like that genre of music. And they auto-tuned Brandon Flowers' vocals like to the extreme on purpose. But it's like throughout the whole song. So it's not even just like a moment in the song, it's like the whole song. And then this other third song, I heard a live version of, and it's better than those 2, but it's far from like as good as even their worst album, which to me is their Wonderful, Wonderful album. So even though that's not a full album, I'm included in this list because it almost was going to be their new album. And I'm really glad that Brandon was like, well, wait, I actually don't really love this as much as I thought. And
This,
I think
this taste has been building up, I can tell.
Well, yeah, but I will say, I think the only reason they're doing a second greatest hits album is because their record label probably told them to. And the record label was like, well, if you're not going to give us that other album you told us you were, then we got to do another greatest hits. So they're probably like, can we just use some of those other new songs? And they're like, sure. Another disappointing album, new Cool Work Kids album. I have not liked their last, I think, 3 albums they've done. Ever since, really, I mean, they had an album called LA Divine. And
that's the Miracle Mile, right?
No. That's 2 albums after Miracle Mile. That's Dear Miss Lonely Hearts. LA Divine won't have anything that you know, but it actually was like one of their most successful songs on the charts. Like, they had the singles Love is Mystical, So Tied Up, Can We Hang On? Those songs were really big on the charts and on the radio, but that's to me like, and that's when they dropped their original drummer left. Their guitarists had been gone for albums before then. They added on like, a new drummer, a third new guitarist, and an additional like keyboard player. And that was the last album where I was kind of like, okay, I like the majority of these songs, but there's a lot of it I don't love. And then there are 2 albums after that one, I just could not get into any of the singles. And are they bad songs? And is this new album, are all the songs like bad? No. They're just so far removed from their original kind of indie rock, alternative rock sound, where they're kind of just mainstream pop/rock sound. And I don't care for that style, at least not from them. And I even heard a couple of those songs live when we saw them earlier this year when they opened for Tears for Fears. And you could like, when they would play a new song and then when they would play something like Hang Me Up to Dry, there was like a clear difference of like, to me, quality. So
what was the audience reaction though, compared to when they were playing the new songs of their last albums versus like what I would call like the Cold War Kids sound, like what I think of?
When they were playing, like, they started off with a couple of those songs from that middle album that I was talking about, the one that like did really well on the charts. Mm-hmm. Those got a good amount of applause and people singing along. Then they play their older songs. Those got probably even more applause. And then when they played like their most recent new singles, there were still a lot of people that were singing along and stuff, but way less.
Okay. So, I mean, that checks out, I would say.
But there also, a lot of those people probably were there for Tears for Fears and not Cool War Kids because they were the opening act. So I kind of understand that too. It's not like I was at a Cool War Kids show,
True.
And then the most disappointing album, it shouldn't really be number one. The Cool War Kids one should be, or even the Killers songs, because I expect more from them. But we have to talk about it. And we might do a whole episode dedicated to this album, so we won't spend too much time. But the new Bare Naked Ladies album, I don't even know what it's called. I think it's called In Flight.
It is.
It is not good. Oh my god, it is. And we did a whole episode dedicated to how much we love Bare Naked Ladies and how underrated they are. And I know you didn't listen to the whole album, but I know I sent you some of the singles, so you can attest to how disappointing it is.
Well, I think the highlight for me is that one. You sent me a clip of BNL doing the lead single "Loving Life," like on some TV show or something.
Yeah, like Regis and Kelly or whatever now it's called. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and they were not on their game. It was kind of sad to see. And I mean that in a genuine way. Like, I don't know, they've kind of lost their touch, and I would say a lot of like kind of like comedy type bands do, just as a, just purely because of age. But it kind of sucks because they're really good musicians too, and I think that they are unique musicians. So it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's just every album I almost think they're kind of getting worse, and yeah, it's all just disappointing. Like, I just I don't want to sound mean. I hate being mean, especially on the internet.
You just announced possibly doing an episode trashing the album.
Because I do think it's important to. I do think it is it's an interesting thing to talk about when you think a band has like dipped in quality that much. And even if like we took, and I hate to also comparing it to like the Stephen Page albums, before he left, but like I loved All in Good Time, the first one without Stephen Page, and I liked the one after that too, Green Streak, a good amount, and the one after that, Silver Ball, I even have that one on vinyl. Like that one's a good album, but ever since that one, it's like the one after that was like, okay, we have more of those pop songs that I didn't like on those previous albums, and less rockers and less like clever songs. And like 2 more albums later, we get this new one that came out this year, and it's just like they're singing songs with like the most like poppy, annoying choruses where they're just repeating the song title, I'm Loving Life, like 20 times in a row. Like nothing about it musically is interesting. The lyrics are as cliche as can be. And then the few times where the lyrics aren't cliche, like there's a one song where Ed Robinson is singing about like he's too old for this shit. Like he's singing from this perspective of like an older person, which again, we kind of talked about it before, like as bands and artists get older, sometimes their perspective on music will change. But this was like a boomer screaming at like his computer. So not good was my point.
Then that actually kind of reminds me of something. So kind of not more of a tangent than a transition, but the Dead Milkmen, they released an album this year. And I don't even know, I can't remember what it's called, like something Quiet Quaker Pills. It was something random and weird, but I wouldn't even say it was a bad album for them. Like I thought it was pretty good, I guess, compared to maybe like their last release. But the point being is the lead single for that is what is it? My grandpa's not a racist, he just voted for one. And so when you're singing about them being like, kind of like have like a boomer song and stuff, it was just kind of funny to hear another band that's old but is still kind of like just doing what they've been doing. Kind of that.
Was that a better boomer song at least?
Oh well, yeah, because that was like satire, or whatever.
Okay, yeah. So like it's like they're.
Sorry, I should have clarified that. Yeah,
yeah. Well, no, knowing a little of their music, I knew that it was like satire, but like, was it still a good song, like musically?
I mean, Dead Milk, when you have to kind of judge it by its own standards, I thought it was pretty good, for them and everything. But it's interesting because like I felt like they just lost it due to age. You can't write music that kind of not jokey and just kind of punk. There's an expiration date for that. But I feel like they kind of stuck to kind of their vibe, their mission, where like BNL, like you said, they've really like changed as a band, but they've proven that they can still write good stuff. But I don't know. There's just that change.
Yeah, I do get it. Like, because at least with like the BNL one, like musically, that was probably the best song out of all the ones on the album. But it sounded like a very boring take on like on a Tom Petty song. And like Eddie Vedder did the same thing on his most recent solo album, the one he put out last year. He had a song where it even featured Belmont Tench, the Heartbreakers keyboardist, pianist, on the Eddie Vedder song.
Wow.
And like, I get it was kind of a nod to sounding like a Tom Petty song, but like too much to where it was just like not like if I'm going to listen to this, why wouldn't I just go listen to a better Petty song? And that's what the BNL that Too Old song was like too. Like musically, it wasn't bad, definitely better than the Loving Life song, but like the best thing about it is that it sounds like a bad Petty song. That's not a good compliment. So yeah, so that album, not good. In fact, I will be shocked if they put out any more songs from here on out that I will even somewhat enjoy. Which sucks because like 10 years ago, I would not have said that. I would have said, yeah, they're not making music I love as much anymore, but they're still putting out good songs. This new album had not one song I liked. Even their last one had at least one decent song, and one before that had like two. This one's zero. Zero. But let's talk about some positives. Really quick, honorable mention to two Tragically Hip side projects. Not really side projects because Tragically Hip's not really a band anymore, but Paul Langlois, one of the Hips guitarists, and Gord Sinclair, their bassist, they each put out solo albums this year. They're not on my top 10 list because I think that if you're a Hip fan, they might scratch that itch for you for wanting more Hip music. But the Paul Langlois album, I like his vocals and the melodies are decent, but the music's a little too straightforward. Maybe a little like just nothing too exciting. Where the Gord Sinclair record, I love the music and I love like the melodies, but his vocals are kind of an acquired taste.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
It's like if they came together and like did an album together, I think it would be actually really good. But on their own, I like wouldn't necessarily go out and buy them, but I did listen to them a couple times, and I do think there's some decent songs. And I do think if you're a Hip fan, you should check them out. But I would not put them as high as I would like Gord solo albums, which one of them he did release this year. So with that, I'm just going to run through this list. And you can give me your thoughts.
I'll judge you for everyone.
Number 10, this one's kind of a cop out, but it was released this year, but it's Death Cab for Cuties album, Asphalt Meadows, but acoustically. So that was the album they released last year, which was in my top 3 of last year. This year, they released an acoustic version of it.
Okay, that definitely is a cop out answer.
But the songs are so good. And I will say this, acoustically, there's only like maybe 2 songs that I think work better acoustically. So for the most part, I much prefer the electric normal album version. Mm-hmm. But it still sounds great. They put it on vinyl. It's cool when you want to chill and listen to something a little bit more quieter, even though some of the songs are still upbeat. I just don't think the acousticness gives the songs more depth for the most part, like some people do, but it is a good record. So
how does that compare to like the U2, the U2 record where they...
Because that one was so self-indulgent, unfortunately. Like the Death Cab one, I think like they did a couple of the songs acoustically for like promos, and they liked the way they sounded so much, they're like, let's just redo the whole album acoustically. So it was kind of a cool idea where the U2 one is like, well, we don't want to write new music. We're not finished writing new music yet, so we're going to go back and take 40 songs. And like Adam Clayton and Larry Mullins is like, they're barely on any of the songs. It's mostly just the Edge and Bono. So, yeah. And like I said, some of it sounds great. And I'm in the minority fans of actually liking most of it because a lot of YouTube fans hated it. I don't think it's that bad, but like, I think even, our friend Chris, he only listened to it once and he was like, yeah, some of it's okay. But yeah, it's not like, crazy good. But the Death Cab one is actually really good. Like if you like that album, definitely check out the acoustic version. But I put it as low as I could, number 10 on my list, because it is kind of a cop out because that album, like the original album, came out last year. Number 9 is a band that we have not really talked about because I've only gotten into them like a month ago, and that's a band called Wilco. Their new album came out this year called Cousin. Um, I've only listened to it a couple times because I've been trying to go through the discography, and I've only heard like maybe 4 of their albums at this point. And I was gonna do it like in chronological order, but then people in the Wilco subreddit were like, "No, listen to like these 2 albums." So I listened to those 2 and really enjoyed them. And then the only reason I listened to this new album this year is because I'm like, oh well, if I'm liking their stuff for the most part, I'll probably like the new album, and I did. And I wanted to like, if I liked it, I wanted to put it on my list. So, but it's number 9 because I haven't spent as much time with it as I have the rest of the other 8 albums on the list. But I might give you a Wickle album because I'm slowly getting into them more and more.
I do have a couple bands where I'm like kind of getting into them, but I'm not comfortable enough with their work to like.
Oh yeah.
To like do do a pod on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not even close to that either. But they're a band that, and I don't love everything they've done. Like, I'm not getting drawn into their music as much as I did the Hip or Spoon, which are 2 other bands that I've gotten into over the last 10 years. But I could see, me listening to all their albums by the end of next year, and I could maybe see them being maybe not top 5 on my Spotify Wrap next year, but in the top 10. Number 8 is Glenn Hansard's newest album, What's East is West of Me Now. It's kind of a slight comeback from his last album was this experimental kind of chamber rock, darker sound with a lot of longer songs, with a lot of moments where the songs were like instrumental and they would get really loud and then quiet and then loud. And this album, there's a couple songs like that, but then there's a couple songs where there's more straightforward, just acoustic guitar or full band. And I do think it's a slight return. I do enjoy this Glenn Hansard album more than the one he released a couple years ago. It doesn't have as many standout moments, but it's a short, like I think 10-song album, maybe even 9 songs, and it's sweet and to the point. And there's a couple songs. There's one song in particular that didn't make my top 10 list, but it's called "Down on Her Knees," and I think I sent it to you, but I don't think you had time to listen to it.
It sounds kind of totally did not.
It sounds like a Frame song a little bit. It's dark. It kind of has a vibe of like a Burn the Maps Frame song. And it's probably one of his more rock, kind of gritty, grungier songs that he's done since anything he's done with the Frames, which has been decades now at this point almost.
Well, that's promising to hear. I guess I will have to go check that one out.
The whole album isn't like that, but that is one of the highlights on the album.
Hey, but even one, like I feel like when Glenn does something right, he really does it right.
So. Oh yeah, for sure. And like any Glenn release will probably make a top 10 list for me at the end of the year because even like my least favorite songs from him, I still enjoy. They're just not up to his standards. But this new album was pretty good. So number 8. Number 7, I won't go into it too much because this one could be a potential future episode for us, album for album. And it is the aforementioned Boy Genius album. It's called The Record. Okay. And it's their debut album. Like I said, they did an EP years ago. This is the first full album. And only knowing Phoebe Bridgers' music and not the other 2 in the band, Julian Baker and Lucy Dacus, I enjoyed all of their songs. And then they have a couple songs where they're singing with each other. So like there's songs where it's like each of them have a couple songs in the album, just kind of where you could tell like it was like their song, like in a super group like the Traveling Wilburys. It's like this one was a Tom Petty song, but they all sing on it. This one was a Bob Dylan song, they all sing on it. Like it's like that in this band with this album. But then there's a couple where like they each have a verse, so it's kind of exciting in that sense because it's like there's more than one singer, more than one songwriter. And there's a lot of decent stand-up moments. There are a couple of weak moments, and the album suffers from it being a little too slow, which was kind of, I think, a little of your concerns or, with the Phoebe Bridgers album I gave you last year. But
right.
I think you might enjoy this album more than that because there's a little bit more flavors. There's a little bit more like textures on the album. And that's mainly because there's 2 other, singer-songwriters. So that made it number 7. These next ones are ones that you and I have already talked about on the album, so on the podcast, I mean, so we're not going to go into too much detail. But at number 6, I had the newest Foo Fighters album, But Here We Are. Solid bounce back record for them. Unfortunately, the circumstances were not great, but the tragedy that Dave Grohl had to suffer over this last year or so made for some truly great music from them. And I definitely put it over their last 2, almost 3 albums, probably. So that's my number 6. Beating it, though, at number 5, I had the new Queens of the Stone Age album, In Times New Roman, which we also talked about. I think I liked it more than you, and I don't know if you would put it as high as number 6 if you had a list.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I was going to say, well, I liked the Queens of the Stone Age more than the Foo Fighters when it came out, but I don't know. The Queens of the Stone Age one really has grown on me. And I was reading in a guitar magazine a lot, as I was telling you, there was like a lot of guitarists that were actually like praising the single Emotion Sickness or just the album in general. So I don't know. I feel like I need to give it a few more listens, but I think it could actually kind of get near the top of my list. I know my favorite album of the year, but I'm sure you'll get to it.
Number 4, above the Queens of the Stone Age, was the new Brad album, In the Moment You're Born. I maybe have this higher, like in reality, do I like it more than the Foo Fighters Queens of the Stone Age? Maybe not, but there's some sentimentality that makes it higher for me. One is that it's most likely going to be the last new music we get from them because Sean Smith, their lead singer, has passed away a couple years ago. But we might get live albums from them in the future, maybe B-sides, I don't know. But so that part of it. Also, you went with our dad to get the album signed for me, the vinyl copy. And then you send it to me. That also was like a really cool moment. And I do think it has some fantastic songs on it. It's a very solid Brad album. It has kind of, I feel like, little bits and pieces of all their albums kind of in it. So, yeah, that's my number 4.
Yeah, that was a great record.
Number 3, and this is, I'm guessing, is your favorite album of the year. Number 3 is the latest Ben Folds album, What Matters Most.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah. Yes, I really enjoyed that one. And we got to go see him live too when you visited up here.
Yep.
That was a blast. Sounded great.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that even the ones on that album that I didn't love have grown on me. I mean, I almost brought it up when you mentioned it earlier, but I knew we were going to talk about it now, is when you're talking about comedy bands as they get older with B&L, their comedy bits doesn't work. Ben Folds with this new album took a different approach where I felt like he was writing about more serious topics. And this album was, I think, maybe his most mature lyrically. And I enjoy that, like the lyrics kind of felt like his Songs for Silverman album, where it was like, yeah, there's some funny bits in some of the songs, but he's singing about like loss in a lot of the songs, and he's singing about the importance of moments and things like that. And yeah, it's well produced, and
it was different instrumentation for him as well. There's like more guitar and kind of more acoustic sounds.
Yeah, for sure. But then there's some moments that sounds like the opening song.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. Yeah, that one I felt like I had a more classic Ben Folds moment. But then, yeah, like the single Winslow's Garden, you get like electric guitars, So, yeah. So that one, number 3. Number 2 is Gord Downey's album Luster Parfait. It's a weird title. All this like Spotify and Apple Music consider it Gord Downey and Bob Rock, because Bob Rock produced the album, and Bob Rock actually wrote and recorded a lot of the music, because this album, obviously, him and Gord started writing it before Gord was even diagnosed with his, brain cancer. And then when he was diagnosed, he talked about Rob and said, "Hey, eventually I would love for you to finish these songs because I do want, people to hear them." And Bob Rock waited a while because he just said it was, the the wound was too fresh, like years after he passed away. But now that it's been, I think I think it's been 5 years, maybe 6 years. He decided this year was the right time, so he finished recording the songs, and it's great. It's definitely more electric than like the last couple of Gord Downie solo records that were also released after he passed away. And sometimes the Bob Rockness is a little too much for the songs. Bob Rock, he produced Metallica's The Black Album, Insane Anger, so, and like Def Leppard. So, but he also produced a couple hip albums that I really like. So he works better with like the hip and with Gord. And there's a couple songs on here that are like classic Gord, lyrically, vocally, like it's great. Is it a little too overproduced, especially on the vocals? Yeah, like that's just Bob Rock for you. But I mean, any new Gord music, and we might be running out of it here pretty soon because I know the Hip recorded some songs before Gord passed away, and those will probably see the light of day. But I think for solo stuff, unless they go back into the vault, like I think this might be the last of it. But it was great. And then number one is an album that we done a whole episode about. My favorite album of the year, Jason Isbell's Weather Vanes. Are you surprised?
I am not surprised at all. It was love at first listen for you.
Yeah, I know, not for you. But yeah,
I still enjoy a lot of the tracks.
It was your first Jason Isbell album, so it's hard to like listen to an artist for the first time ever and be able to say, "Oh, I love this so much,"
Yeah, except for Fully Completely and Darkness. But that aside, though, no, that was a really high quality album. I don't think any of it was really filler or anything. It was, yeah. I totally see why you put it as number one.
Yeah, fantastic album. Probably one of Jason's best albums. His first album that he self-produced. There was a couple times where I thought maybe a little overproduced, but then other times where it sounded fantastic. I saw a lot of those songs live when I saw them earlier this year. They were amazing. Overall, like he, even maybe more so than the Gord album, like the best lyrics on any album aren't, this year alone for sure. Musically, it has a lot of everything. Like it has, some Southern rock, a little country, more straightforward rock, some acoustic.
The long jam out at the end of the album.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments where there's some jams for sure. So, yeah, like, if you haven't heard Jason Isbell's Weather Vanes, definitely check it out. So that was my top 10. Not too many surprises, right? A lot of artists that I listen to all the time.
Yeah, and I was actually happy that like the ones that most of the new music I listen to is just your suggestions or stuff that we end up covering on this podcast. But I was actually surprised that a lot of your, like your 5 down included some of the ones we both shared together.
Yeah. Was there any albums that I didn't mention that you listened to this year that were new?
Not too many. I listened to the Zombies new record, which I thought was good for, these people being that old. Like if you compare it to like the Beach Boys kind of like later releases, like
Summer of Love or whatever that one's called.
That was a while ago now, but yeah. Yeah, no, I thought it was good for a bunch of old guys. Like honestly, I haven't listened to it much. Like I haven't really got into it at all or anything. But as far as quality,
is the equation for older musicians not to include John Stamos as your drummer?
That is one of the criteria that you need to reach. But otherwise, I think that was mostly it. Honestly.
And then I did want to just do my top 10 songs of the year. Some of these, obviously, you've heard because they're on some of these albums we talked about. Some of them you haven't. Number 10 is the closing track from Ben Folds' album, Moments. On first listen, was not one of my favorites, but it was a song when we went to Oregon earlier this year and saw our family. Moments was like a perfect sum up for me. And I even used it as part of my captions when I posted pictures online.
I remember that.
It's a very sentimental track. which for Ben Folds, usually that's not always his strongest, skill set when writing songs, but
Hashtag sentimental guy.
true. But he nails it on this album, and that song's probably like the best when it comes like the sentimentality of his songs. Number 9 is a song called $20 from the Boy Genius album. Great rock song, a song that makes me want to check out Julian Baker's the rest of her discography because she's the main songwriter on that song. One that I think you would like. I'm not gonna have you listen to it now because I might give you that album next year for the podcast, but it's one where if you do listen to the album, you'll like it. It's a kind of a fun little punk rock, indie rock song, but then it has a lot of changes to it that you wouldn't expect. So that's number 9. Number 10 is the title track and opening track to the Brad album, In the Moment That You're Born. I know it wasn't one of your favorite songs.
I wouldn't put that as my favorite for the album, I don't think. But it is a good song, though.
I really liked it. I thought from them it was a really darker sound. I think maybe the fact that it was like a song that released after Sean Smith passed away, it's almost like chilling that he's singing about the moment you're born, after he's passed away. But I think it's just a really cool track.
I thought it was a cool single because it made you wonder, like, what else is going to be on this album? Is it going to be stuff like this? And
even though it wasn't, it still is a cool track. It's the one, even though there's maybe others I would go back to more on that album. Like that's the I feel like is a good sum up for that album. Number 7, another closing track, the closing track to the Queens of the Stone Age album, the song Straight Jacket Fitting. Long song, the longest on the album, but this kind of cool, slower, kind of bluesy song that in the bridge really is bluesy. It sounds like Roadhouse Blues from the Doors. But it just kind of builds and builds. It's got great lyrics, a very dark song, and then it ends with this little acoustic, bit that is actually taking elements from the first song on the album and incorporating it into an acoustic version of it. Great way to end the album. I think probably the strongest song on the album. Great song.
It's a banger.
Number 6 is the Foo Fighters song Show Me How. It's the one that Dave Grohl wrote with his daughter Violet, and she sings on the song. And I think their voices sound fantastic together. The song is kind of almost this like kind of shoegaze rock sound, which is a sound that the Foo Fighters haven't really done too much before in their discography. So I think that was a cool approach.
That was also my favorite from that album.
Yeah, and I almost put the title track as my favorite, but then when I went back and listened to the album, I was like, oh no, Show Me How. That one is just like such a cool, different sound from them. I love the clean guitars. Like, yeah, it's catchy. It's soothing. It's a lot of importance because it's about his mom passing away. Like, great song. And his daughter being on it is just cool, especially because her voice sounds great with his. Right. Number 5, another closing song. This one being Miles. The last song on the Jason Isbell album, Weather Vanes. You were talking about the album ending on a jam. Yeah, I love Miles. Like,
it is one of my favorites off there for sure. I'm just surprised that it's that much for you too.
Oh yeah, the verses have this like Tom Petty, Mary Jane's Last Dance kind of vibe. But then the part in the middle kind of gets like kind of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young kind of sounding, but then like it gets really heavy at the end with his like jam. Some of the guitar licks near the end kind of reminds me of Radiohead. Like it's got so many influences. It makes for a really interesting song and something that you can't really find in a lot of his other albums. So standout moment. Number 5 is the title track from the Gord album, Lustre Parfait. Fun, really fun, upbeat song. It's super catchy. One of his most catchy songs, but without being too annoying. It's a little too overproduced because of Bob Rock, but it's a fun song. I think it's one that you would find enjoyable. It doesn't really sound like The Hip, which is kind of cool, but it still kind of sounds like Gord, like some of his other solo songs. It's just a fun, upbeat, catchy song. Number 3 is another Ben Folds song, Winslow Gardens.
Oh, he's on there twice.
Yeah, the next 3 are also going to be repeats. The next 2, but yeah, that Winslow Winslow Gardens is my favorite from the Ben Folds album. Kind of like with the Luster Parfait, the Gourd song. I think both were singles that came out last year, technically, but well, maybe not the Ben Folds, maybe the Gourd, but they were the first singles from the albums, but they still ended up being maybe my favorites from the albums. Like they're like Winslow Gardens is just it's so fun because it's like hearing Ben's vocals with guitars, electric guitars, just great. But it's just such a catchy song. It's like a kind of a cute song about like two older people in a relationship.
It's in 7/4.
Yes, it's in 7/4. Like it has cool, it has a cool bridge. Well, the bridge is your least favorite part of the song, but I like the bridge.
I mean, I like it too. I don't have any complaints about that song, really. It's one that, like, once I heard the rest of the album and stuff, I kind of forgot about it, I guess, really. But I really do like it, and I think it's solid, and I think it is one of the standout tracks from the album for sure.
And then my number 2 is a song called Not Strong Enough from another one from the Boy Genius album. It's the one they released as a single where all three of them, like 2 of them have a verse and a chorus, and then the third one sings the bridge in the last chorus. So it's very evenly split between the 3 of them. Very like it's like a melancholy song where like parts of it makes you feel happy and then parts of it make you feel sad. So it's that perfect kind of balance of like bittersweet, but it catchy at the same time. The chorus is super catchy. It's a very like clean sounding song, even though it has like, drums and guitars. Great song. And out of like their first 4 singles, that was the one that like drew me the most into wanting to listen to them because it sounded like not just one of them writing the songs, but all 3 of them writing a song together. So that's my number 2. And then number 1, we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but Cast Iron Skillet, Jason Isbell, and 400 Unit. Perfect song. I can go on and about it. In fact, probably earlier in this podcast, I don't know how we're going to edit this, but I'm going to include a cover of me playing it. So you're either going to hear it now or you have already heard it. That'll be decided at a later moment.
Don't watch the cast iron skillet. Don't drink and drive, you'll spill it. Don't ask too many questions or you'll never get to sleep. There's a hole inside you, fill it. Shower up and shave, put flowers on the grave and ask the Lord to save his soul, although you know that it's too late. Was it 27 times? Was it 29? I heard the blade broke off inside the man. He took a while to die. How'd it get so low? Seems like just a week ago we were 10 and 12 years old. He was sweet and soft and shied away from the inside fastballs and died by doing life without parole. Don't watch the cast iron skillet. That dog bites my kid, I'll kill it. Don't walk where you can't see your feet. Don't ask questions, just believe it. Jamie found a boyfriend with smiling eyes and dark skin, and her daddy never spoke another word to her again. The old man at the quick stop, lying to the county cops and laughing like his soul was without sin. How'd it get so low? Seems like just a week ago she was sitting on your shoulders watching fireworks in the sky. He treats her like a queen, but you you don't know, 'cause you ain't seen it. It's hard to go through life without your daddy by your side. Don't ask the cast iron skillet. This town won't get no better, will it? She found love and it was simple as a weather vane. Her own family tried to kill it. Don't ask the cast iron skillet. Don't ask the cast iron skillet. Don't ask the cast iron.
But I love it. It's super simple. It's mostly just him and acoustic guitar, but there's some accordion, there's some guitar swells, which are great. Such a great storytelling song. Again, it's very sad. The stories he tells in the song are very sad, but there's like culture and these stories of these people that maybe he knew, maybe he made up. They interweave with one another in a perfect way, and it's a perfect song. So that's my number one.
You know, that's a pretty strong list. I mean, the ones I didn't know, you know, they make sense why you put them there. But you know, hearing all these new records that came out and songs, I think it's really important to remember that there is always good music out there, you know? Because, like, I wasn't super excited necessarily for, like, the Foo Fighters record. Not because I didn't want one, but I just hadn't really been into them lately. But, like, that was a record that surprised me, for sure. So just hearing all these songs that stuck with you, it's always really cool.
Any other songs you want to highlight? From any albums, or well, not any albums, but any of the albums that came out this year?
No, I think you nailed it with Show Me How. I mean, that was one that definitely caught my attention. I really did like a lot of the Ben Folds songs. Back to Anonymous was really cool. I thought it had a real, like, laid back vibe, and was pretty genuine performance from him. But no, yeah, I think you covered it pretty well.
Yeah, so I would say overall, really, for me at least, a really good year for music. I mean, there's some years where, especially because I think you and we could branch out even more with the music we listen to. Like, yeah, we mostly stay in one genre, but even in that genre, there's a lot of bands we don't listen to, whether they're older classic rock bands or newer bands or artists. And I think the podcast is helping with that. And I think next year we have some ideas to expand our taste even more, possibly. And, but for me to have like 10 albums this year that came out that I enjoyed, and I almost bought almost all these albums. In fact, I bought every single one of the albums on my list except for the Wilco one. And that's just because I only got into it last month, and it's probably one I will buy in the future. So, good year for music, at least for me. And like I said, we talked about a lot of these albums actually on previous episodes. So definitely check out those episodes if you want to hear our full thoughts on the Ben Folds album, the Jason Isbell album, Queens of the Stone Age, Brad, and Foo Fighters.
Hey, and I just remembered for next year, I'm hoping there'll be the Soundgarden release.
Well, okay.
I don't know if they set a date for it, whether it is going to be this year, but
I actually just last week, Matt Cameron had an interview with a magazine. First of all, it was his birthday last week, so happy belated birthday to Matt Cameron.
We love you, Matt.
But unfortunately, he mentioned in a recent interview that all the drama, the behind the scenes drama with Chris Cornell's estate with his wife, and Soundgarden is actually not solved yet. So he made it seem like it might not even come out next year, unfortunately.
Oh, that is such a letdown.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but
we need a Christmas miracle.
I know. But you never know. Maybe they'll get it solved, and it'd be great if the album's like already just done and sitting waiting for release. Like, I don't know why they couldn't at least finish the songs while they're working things out, you know?
Yeah. I mean, hey, I just, when it gets here, it gets here. I'm just excited to hear something new from the band.
And then speaking of Matt Cameron, him and a bunch of the other program members have stated that their new album will be ready for next year as well.
Nice. And Matt just released something too, right? That little thing he was doing for like Black Friday or something.
Yeah, I forget what it was, but yeah, he did release something recently. The program album I'm not looking forward to because Andrew Watt's producing it, and
Oh, there's one coming out.
The Pearl Jam album.
What?
I just said.
Wait,
Matt Cameron said there's a new Pearl Jam album that's ready to come out next year.
that's what I'm saying though. Is I didn't know there was a new Pearl Jam album coming out.
I just said that a second ago.
Okay, whatever.
What did you think I said?
Whatever.
You're not listening.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
No, I think that was it. That was my last point. But no, yeah, we have some cool ideas for the podcast next year. We're gonna have Chris back on a couple episodes, hopefully next month. And I think we got some ideas for some new guests, and yeah, I'm excited for what's to come next year musically, and not only just for music, but for our podcast. And again, thanks to everyone who listened, who have listened to any of these episodes. I did get an email with Spotify telling me about our podcast, like Wrapped for People's, and it said like there were 9 people who had our podcast in their top 3, which was interesting.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad.
And our biggest episode this year was the Bruce episode. It was the one that had the most listens or downloads. So that was cool.
Represent.
But yeah, we hope everyone has a great holiday season. And we will be back next month for who knows what. We don't even know yet. But until then, we hope everyone takes care. And Tony's going to play us a little song here to close us out. So until next time. Hope you take care, and you'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.
Christmas time is here. Happiness and cheer. Fun for all the children call their favorite time of year. Snowflakes in the air. Carols everywhere. Olden times and ancient rhymes of love and dreams to share. Sleigh bells in the air. Beauty everywhere. Yuletide by the fireside and joyful memories there. Christmas time is near. Families drawing near. Oh, that we could always see such spirit through